Good evening, everyone. How's it going? My name is Jacob, possibly also known as Rogue Trick on this channel. Still working on the channel name, still working on the channel, really. You might have seen my other stuff. I do RPG content, at least on this channel. 100% focus on RPG, tabletop, D&D, Shadowrun, etc. Pathfinder, you know, the works. Not that those are all the RPGs, but you know how it works. So I got into a discussion about the golden rule of RPGs. Or rather, I saw a pretty controversial statement from Adam Koebel saying that the golden rule in RPGs is a cop-out for bad game design. Don't at me. I thought that was a pretty controversial statement. So I checked the thread, and I saw a pretty reasonable reply here saying, no, it's a recognition that design isn't and can't be one size fits all, and that designers are fallible. No matter how much good work they produce, your habit is to play things as literally as possible, even when there are clear problems for the groups. It's to diffuse that, which is probably the most reasonable response to this entire discussion. And then the straw man is then, okay, in 5e, instead of death saves, the GM just gets to decide when people live or die. That's more fun. Which is not even close to what the person is saying. This is a pretty dishonest way to attack that. There is merit to what he's saying in terms of the argument itself, that if you start flip-flopping around with the rules, then yeah, that's a problem, because then the players don't know what's the basis. Or if you suddenly switch without telling the players, yeah, that's a problem. And then I agree with you that's bad. You should always have the rules as a baseline and go from there, because then no one knows what's going on. But that's not what they're saying, and you're saying, okay, in 5e, instead of death saves, the GM just gets to decide when people live and die. It's not even close to what they're saying. If that's what your group is going for, sure, I personally think that's not a great way to do it. But the problem with this kind of argument is now they're sort of stuck with trying to defend that side. The players die only when it's narrative appropriately, and then, of course, this looks really bad, right? So, I don't know, I think that's not really a fair way to argue it. In general, this was a discussion I had with this person here about Shadowrun specifically. There was a lot of discussion about Shadowrun because, of course, he specifically said that Shadowrun is not a very good system, which it's fair to think that. I think Shadowrun has its issues, but I think Shadowrun is one of the best systems out there because it fully allows for proper customization, which is something I'm missing in 5e. I know all the game designers are saying 5e is so good because it's very, very well balanced and it's very smooth and streamlined, which is benefits. I'm not saying it's bad. I have a lot of fun playing 5e, but I have a lot more fun in terms of character creation and feeling like a character in the setting and not just the character being the class. Because in many cases in 5e, it's very, very, very difficult to have a meaningful change between two characters of the same class at level 1. Like, two rogues at level 1, they're gonna be the same character, more or less. Like, yeah, there's maybe a few bonuses here or there. Just a simple comparison like Pathfinder, you're gonna have significant changes between two rogues. I play a lot of rogues, so I know this. Specifically rogues. Something I was really, really annoyed by with 5e, how streamlined they were. But again, that's what they were going for. It's not necessarily worse. It's just a system of gaming that I really don't like, where everything is very much the same, especially if you're doing point buy. You just virtually have every rogue is the same rogue. They start to branch out a little bit later on, but considering the fact that everyone has essentially spring attack and everyone has the same setup for everything, it's just the gameplay becomes very dull and very samey, in my opinion, compared to Pathfinder, at least. Then again, Pathfinder has its own issues with of course, Mathfinder as it goes higher up. I personally don't have any issues with that, but I've been playing for a very long time. I 100% understand why it's intimidating for people at higher ups, but that's a tangent. Regardless, the discussion was, so just because you're having fun playing a game doesn't mean it's a good game, sees Shadowrun. And then they're saying here, what you don't enjoy playing, rolling 30 to 50 d6. You don't really do that in Shadowrun. I think this is a really weird statement. You're saying that 30 to 50 is the norm, when really the norm is 5 to 10, even 3 to 15 rather. That's about the most dice, like that's the usual range of dice you roll in that game, really. If you're absolutely mega hyper super duper focused on just tanking, then yeah, you can get up to like 40 at character creation before armor penetration, before you get reductions, like some armors even make it so you don't have to roll anything if it's too low of a damage. And of course, snipers and grenades, which is probably the only thing you're gonna be resisting, has like minus 12 AP, which means even then you're just rolling 28, which yeah, 28 dice, that's a lot of dice, but if that's your thing, should the game really take that away from you? Should it be like you just that's the issue, right? With games like D&D where like, oh, I'm the strong guy. If anyone has seen The Gamers, you know this joke where the wizard and so the barbarian goes to lift up a gate and he rolls a d20 and has like a +4, which is really good. And he fucks it up. He rolls a 1 and then he's like, I broke my back. And then there's a wizard who does the same thing and he has like a -1. He rolls a natural 20 and he lifts it and says, oh, lift with your legs and all that. Good fun. Classic. The Gamers. Everyone knows The Gamers. That's an issue with D&D in that, yeah, you can have a character who is stronger with a +4 compared to the -1, but in terms of the roll, the +5 is relevant, but it's not that extremely relevant compared to like dice amount in Shadowrun. But obviously you can always fuck things up with even if you're good at something, and you can hopefully often succeed with things even if you're not good enough with something. But that's the thing though, if you only have 3 dice in something, you can't actually roll more than 3 successes, which is what makes Shadowrun kind of more realistic, as in the guy who's wheelchair bound still can't like run the super marathon and beat the guy who's like trained his life for that, because he doesn't just have +5 difference. It's sort of the difference between narrativistic, simulationist, and gamist, the sort of trio, right? Where people can't see past the differences between the system and just find one that works for them, which is fine. Obviously, I mean, the takeaway from this is play the games as you want them, as you like them. That's the optimal way to play it for you. But the big but, make sure everyone knows what you're playing, the style you're playing. Make sure everyone knows the house rules. And then it works. Because the alternative... So this person was saying, there's no... Have you ever tried running a deck in Shadowrun? There's nothing smooth about the design. Absolutely nothing. I said, yeah, my longest running character was a decker, blah, blah, blah. If it's too convoluted for you, you and your GM can streamline it and just not use the weirder checks. But they work, and we used them. I got into the hang of it after a couple of sessions. There's no way to use the rules as written, no way. I said I use most of them. And Adam is arguing that if you change a rule, then you might as well ignore all rules, which is what he said before with the GM might as well decide when people die or not. And I disagree with that. Just because there's specific rules that doesn't fit a group doesn't mean that the entire system is garbage. That's just crazy. And then they say, if I need to change the rules of a game to have them work for me, then why not rather find a game that has only rules that work for me, which is just insanity. So sure, if you find it, where do we draw the line of when we just switch games because there's a rule we don't agree with? I have not played a single RPG, not a single tabletop RPG that we didn't just at least change one rule with. Most often like 3, 4, 5, 6, even with just really simple things like 5th edition. Everyone house rolls 5th edition. Like, if you ask 3 different players, what kind of action does it take to drink a potion? You will get 3 different answers, or probably at least 2 different answers, because everyone watched Critical Role, where everyone has the thief ability, where you can drink it as a bonus action. Because people think it's of relative weight, right? Things have, like, some things work for some players, and some things don't, which is fine. The alternative then is, well, I don't like how you have to take going to thief to get it as a bonus action, so we just switch games, which is crazy because obviously they wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. Or I guess I could never imagine myself doing that. At least it's just such a crazy standpoint. Like, if we don't like a single rule, instead of like just changing it to fit the way we play and then telling everyone, hey, this is the way we're gonna play, is everyone okay with that? Instead of that, we just, new game, this doesn't work. Just find a game that has exactly what we need. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm strawmanning right now, because this is actually what I'm looking at. If I need to change the rules of a game to have it work for me, then why not rather find a game that just has only rules that work for me? Same as when Adam says it's not one size fit all, that you can change things, because no matter how good a game designer tries to design a game, that those rules are not going to work for everyone. That's just truth. You cannot make a system that every single player and GM is going to be 100%, every single rule just excellent, or we will just be playing a game without rules. Which is fine. I mean, you can do like my first introduction to RPGs actually was I was at a fencing camp, and I listened to people playing around a campfire without dice. They were just playing. They were playing this kind of grimdark modern day pseudo fantasy thing. I didn't ask them what it was because I actually didn't know what RPGs was back in the day. And they didn't use dice. He just said, the player just said what he did, and the GM just sort of, yeah, sure, it works. Which I don't think I would like that as much nowadays. It could probably be fun. I mean, it's just good old storytelling around a campfire, which is fun. But that's the only system you can find where everyone will be 100% satisfied with every single rule. And to then conflate the thing people say with, okay, maybe we change a couple of rules, to be like, okay, well, what about this awful rule, right? Or maybe he just misunderstood it. But regardless, I feel like this isn't fair representation of what they're saying, because I don't know, I can't see the alternative. So either we play Shadowrun with literally every single rule in the book and stop at everything to make sure we have every single rule nailed down all the time, or we skip some rules sometimes. If it doesn't fit the narrative, if it doesn't fit the mood of a scene, if we have someone be like, wait, did you add the +2 for him being prone? And then the GM has to be like, oh yeah, and then there's the light difference, but wait, he has the augmentation that increases the light difference, so then it goes up 2 steps. Like, yeah, if you want to be very specific, like if you have a sniper specifically who's like, okay, this is very important to my character, I have the specific low light vision on my goggles or my scope that I can switch, so what kind of lighting is in there? And then you can check those rules and be like, okay, well in this case, if you would shoot at this time, you would have a very different, like a little bit of a different benefit or a negative here, or with this kind of lighting. Like, that could be fun. And that's what the rules are there for. Because for those specific situations, when it fits the narrative, the pacing, and the mood of the scene and the game, you don't have to use every single rule all the time. But apparently, with that argument, we should just ignore all rules. Or is that an exaggeration and kind of a little bit silly? I don't know. I feel like, I mean, honestly, and he did say later on that if your way of playing is more fun, then that's the right way of playing it. So I don't want to put him in too bad of a light, and he has a lot of good things to say. And he's done a lot of good things, obviously. But that doesn't feel fair at all to this person's argument and to the argument as a whole. You don't have to like Shadowrun. I think Shadowrun is probably one of the best games out there. It is a little bit intimidating to get into, though. I'm not going to say it isn't. But to just say it's a terrible game because it has some complex rules, I don't think is fair. And to say that just because there are bad rules, we should just ignore them completely and throw it out completely. Because then you get situations where you have to have so few rules or so meaningless rules for everyone to agree with every single part of them that the rules aren't even relevant anyway. So, take away from this, people are never gonna agree online. Honestly, the takeaway from this should be play the games you like the way you like them. And the golden rule of RPG is just fine. Like, yeah, there are ways to improve Shadowrun. And I do agree that the decking can be pretty complicated if you're trying to use every single rule. And that can be a fault with Shadowrun. That is definitely possible. I mean, they made Shadowrun Anarchy, which I don't personally like that much, because it's extremely streamlined comparatively. And what I like about Shadowrun is the openness and the way it allows you to make your specific character, not a character defined by the class or the role, but your character. And sure, 5e has narrative benefits in, like, well, you have backstory, but the bonuses and the meta narrative is just really bad at describing it. the best way they did it in 5e was the feature part of the backstory. I thought that was very good. In my games, I've had players use that very often, and I always love when players use that, because that's something that just says it works. It's similar to professions in Shadow the Demon Lord, where they just say, if the character is a sailor, it just works. And if he's sailing on like when it's a storm, well, he gets to roll his agility or intelligence check with boons, with benefits if you don't play Shadow the Demon Lord, which is a really nice way of doing it. That's like a nice streamline, because we're just skipping the role completely and making it very defined. This character is just better at this, because that's what he does. And many GMs just do that anyway. But hey, since we're adding rules, we might as well throw the entire thing out, right? Just skip the entire game because we're adding a rule that doesn't exist. So I don't know. Am I strawmanning now? I don't feel like it, because this I don't know. This argument doesn't hold up to me at all. And of course, we had a discussion about, yeah, I mean, it's possible. It is technically possible to get this much armor. This is just Shadowrun stuff. If you're not interested in Shadowrun, you can stop here. So thanks for watching. So we were talking about Milspec. He said Orthosking, Sleeping Tiger, Long Coat, Bone-Lacing, High Body Shield. So yeah, technically you can get up to like 40 at character creation if you put all your points, everything into that. But again, that's before arm penetration. And if you really want to put your character being absolutely mega duper hyper good at this one thing, yeah, I won't stop you. I feel like I would be a bad GM if I stopped you from feeling like you're really good at that thing. Unless we're playing like a street game and you're really not supposed to be that powerful at level 1, but that's, well, there's no level 1, but at start, that's a different story. Regardless, play the games the way you like them. I am going to make sure that I show that he does agree with that, I believe. If you're already having fun with your friends playing RPGs and ignoring the rules or playing them exactly, well, poorly designed games, it doesn't matter what anyone on the internet says. So he is agreeing with that. But regardless, I mean, hey, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and we're not talking about something massively mega important here, but I feel like this wasn't fair, and I just felt like I would comment on that. If you don't like the rules, change them. Oh no, I paid 30 for us, that will work. Which is just, is this a baby with the bathwater thing? If there's one single thing or a few things that don't work for your group, change them. You're not saying that, okay, well then we're gonna ignore the entire rule system. Just saying this rule doesn't work for us, so we change it. And that's, what's the issue with that? No. I'm going over the same points here, but the argument that because you change a single rule, the entire rule system is moot, is just insanity. And I promise you that there doesn't exist a group that plays 100% by the rules, don't add anything on their own. And why would there? I mean, we're not playing chess. We're playing RPGs, the storytelling. Rule of cool is a thing. And you change rules as it sees fit, because the important part isn't that you afterwards can say, look, we followed every single rule exactly the way we're supposed to, and the correct outcome was determined because it's completely correct according to the rules. That's the thing you remember is, remember that one time when we fucking dove off the side of a building onto a hang glider and then turned around and shot some people in midair, and there was this, while the bomb went off, and you know, that's the thing, the exciting stories, or the amazing escapes, or the amazing critical hits that just shouldn't have worked but it worked, or just the things you remember. That's the relevant part, not that you followed the rules 100% exactly the way they were supposed to, because we're not playing chess, we're playing a storytelling game, and it's okay to change things without having to say, well, let's skip the entire rule system then. So that's that, without going over the same grounds too much anymore. Thank you guys for watching. Play the games the way you like them, and yeah, have fun. Make some good stories, and take care. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.